I'll swallow your soul.
All
It's such a
right.
weird voice. It's such a
Oh,
weird
I
voice
know.
that they make.
It's
They
it
sound like they're from
wants.
like New Jersey or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. They're trying to be like New
Right?
Jersey-ish, New York-ish. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Swallow your
yeah. I'll
soul.
swallow
I
your
swallow
soul.
your
I'll
soul.
swallow your soul.
Almost sounds like Squirtle, dude.
Hello, horror fan, best friends, and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 51st episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror. Horror comedies that are kind of remakes, but also continuations of the story. Cosmic horror, body horror, folk horror, sci-fi horror, the horror adjacent, thrillers, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. It certainly helps with the engagement. If you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you are so inclined. It's free to do, and you look cool doing it. Audio listeners, the show is also available on podcast services around the world like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so don't forget to leave a rating when you stop by. 5 stars if you're a real one. But enough of all that housekeeping, as I have the distinction of welcoming to his Murders with Mertens debut, OMGzus from Neon Pocket Dimension, Jacob. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Glad to be here.
Hell
What's
yeah.
up? How you doing?
Well, we've been talking about making this happen for a little bit, and I'm glad we were finally able to. Just last night, I was on your show talking horror films with the boys, and it was fun. It was a really good time. I really
Yeah, it was
appreciate you having
awesome.
me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming. We talked about a lot of horror movies, but
Oh,
over
yes, we
here
did.
we talked about one, I believe, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
very interesting to me.
Well,
Very interesting to me.
we discovered as we were trying to figure out a film to do for this one that we both have quite the mutual love for this film. Tonight, yeah, we're going to dive into a favorite film for the both of us in 1987's Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, starring the one and only Bruce Campbell, written by Sam Raimi and Scott Spiegel, and directed, of course, by Sam Raimi. The Evil Dead films were kind of a blank spot for me until I was in undergrad, and then I fell in love with this one. I mean, can't really adequately express how much I love this film, but Jacob, I'm going to let you try.
It's incredible. It's one of the best horror comedies out there. Next to it, obviously, you got American Werewolf in London, which is another excellent horror comedy. But besides that, I really don't know what else like fuses that comedy slapstick with the level of gore that we get from Sam Raimi, of course. I mean, in the first one, it was really intense, but they had a shoestring budget. This was them, you know, going back, back to the drawing board with a whole bunch more money to kind of retcon the first one, although it's sort of a continuation, which you said. But it's incredible. It's just great, and I still love the first one, but dang, like this movie is hilarious. Things happen in this movie that are iconic and quotable. And if you've never seen the movie, things happen in this movie that you'll never expect, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
If
what I
you've
love
never
about it.
seen the movie, I don't know what you're doing here. But at the end of the day, yeah, yeah, like you said, absolutely iconic. I know Sam Raimi had made this movie Crime Wave closer to like 84 or 85. And ultimately, it did very poorly. And he decided to kind of go back to the drawing board and got together with Bruce and some of his regular shemps, and he made this shit happen. And oh, did he make it happen? Um, yeah, yeah. This is a lot of fun, and it's so funny because it's not even an hour and a half, but it really feels like there's it feels for whatever reason, and I don't mean this in a bad way. It feels like a lot longer
Mhm.
than an hour and a half. It feels like there's a lot going on that
Yeah.
is trying to get crammed into an hour and a half film. But they
Yeah,
make it
I
happen.
think they pull it off. I think they pull that effect off because this movie just goes. It does not stop for 1 second. Like even when they're reading pages, it's like a very active conversation, and then something happens. And so somehow they're able to pack so much information and action, I guess is the best way to put it, in that 90 minutes. I just rewatched it today, like at work, because I was like, hey, I want to put it fresh in the mind. I do watch it all the time. I've sort of had it on the background earlier this month, but I'm like, hey, it's time. I already did my Event Horizon rewatch, which I usually do every year because
Nice.
I fucking love that movie. This movie as well.
Nice.
So yeah, like that's what kind of struck me thinking about the film today was that it just keeps moving. It really doesn't stop. And I didn't remember it being like that, because again, it feels long, but it's really
Yeah.
not. It's great. Like
It's
not
one
in a
of
bad
those.
way.
No, not in a bad way at all. I want to keep reiterating that just because I feel awful saying it like that. But no, really, it's just, I think they just
Yeah.
managed to cram so much into such a short run time and to great effect. So, what do you say
Yeah, absolutely.
we jump in there? We start with a bit of exposition from a narrator. It's short enough that I just wrote it all out here. Legend has it
Yes.
that it was written by the Dark Ones, Necronomicon Ex Mortis, roughly translated Book of the Dead. The book served as a passageway to the evil worlds beyond. It was written long ago when the seas ran red with blood. It was this blood that was used to ink the book. In the year 1300 AD, the book disappeared. Slam as that book closes. And while this exposition is going on, you get this awesome montage of the book being flipped through and all these spectral
Yeah.
figures kind of floating around the screen and kind of chittering and cackling, and it's a shit ton of fun. And with that slam, we really get the score kicking in here, and we get such a fun title card. So the film Evil Dead 2, sometimes with the number 2, sometimes with Roman numerals, sometimes with the subtitle Dead by Dawn, and sometimes with combinations of those two things. It's but here in the title card, it is Evil Dead with the Roman numeral 2, and you get this fun little spin of them as well as zooming in. And as we go through the 2, we go into this tunnel, and the classic, the Delta 88, the Oldsmobile Delta 88, Sam Raimi's car comes roaring out of that tunnel. Jesus
That
Christ, that
car
transition.
is so heavy.
Yeah.
Like, that car looked like it would sink like a ton of bricks if it
Oh
hit the
yeah.
water. It would just
I'm
instantly
sure
be
that it
on the
would.
ground, like
Yes.
Metal Mario.
Yeah. Uh, we cut from there to Ash and Linda driving to this cabin that they're about to break into for the weekend. Not renting, not accepting an invite to stay from a friend or relative. Nope, they're just straight up B&E. I suppose is what you can expect from Michigan State students. But yeah, they're getting away from the weekend, but yeah. They cross this rickety bridge and they make it to the cabin, and we cut to Ash playing the piano while Linda dances around while she's Donald Ducking it. I don't know,
Really?
it's fun. It's
The, the term that I know is I don't know if I can swear on here, but it's
oh, by
shirt
all
cocking.
means. Okay.
Shirt cocking. That's how the burners, like all the Burning Man, like hippie types, that's what they call it. Shirt
Okay.
cocking.
I've always known it
She
as
doesn't,
Donald ducking it, but
like,
yeah, at the end of the
yeah. Well,
day,
I've
yeah.
also heard Winnie the Poohing. Winnie the Poohing.
Oh,
That's another really
yeah, that
funny one.
works. That works too. But Ash gets up from the piano and moves in to kiss her and mashes somehow this piece of jewelry that he's given her into her chest. She loves it. And it's this fun little pendant. I can't remember what it looks like in the original film, if it's like the same piece of jewelry or if it's like a take on it. It's been so long,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's
Yeah.
it looks like, almost like a tennis racket or like a mirror, like a hand mirror.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know,
Yeah, it's
but
almost like a magnifying glass almost, you know?
yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, he tries to move in again, and this time she backs away, feeling funny about how they absolutely broke into this cabin for the weekend, and being worried about the owners coming home. Ash, he reassures her and goes to get the champagne that they brought while she changes for bed. And he finds this warm champagne bottle sitting on this desk because of course they didn't chill it. Of course it's not in a refrigerator or a bucket of ice or anything like that. No, it's just sitting there warm, room temperature champagne. uh, but
Gross.
yeah, super gross. And he finds this next to an old reel-to-reel tape recorder, and when he mentions it to Linda, she tells him to see what's on it. See, the whole situation is her fault. She's the one that told him to play the tape. Just so everybody knows,
Yep.
she is the one that told him to start this thing off.
Yep.
But yeah, let's do this, I guess. The dumbass, he turns on the tape and we get a BioShock style audio log of the professor's discovery of this ancient book in an old castle. While we see flashbacks of this happening, it's him, his wife, his research assistant, and his daughter. Um, and he details how they came to the cabin, or he came there with his wife where he could work on translating it in peace. The book, not his wife. She's just going to sit there in a rocking chair working on her knitting. The professor talks about the evil content of the book, and I think that's the moment to turn off the tape, but no, Ash keeps going. He actually picks up the book that's sitting there next to the tape player. Of course, it's obviously bound in human flesh because it's got a fucking face on it, just like what we see behind you there, Jacob. But yeah, he starts flipping through this thing. It's next to a dagger that's clearly made by with a spinal column and probably a baby's skull. That's fun. It's a very tiny little skull that's on the end of this dagger, but yeah, it's as he's flipping through this thing, the professor starts reading from the book. And, personally, I think that's what makes it even worse and causes everything to, kind of go downhill like it does. Like the book is open.
Yeah.
So it's like the voice, regardless if it's live or recorded, if it's real or Memorex, it is reading along with the book. So
Yep.
immediately we cut from here to the evil droning POV shot of a force rushing to the cabin. You can't go wrong with the Evil Dead cam. Um,
Oh, it's the best. Best.
yeah, yeah, it's often imitated, never equally reproduced. That's for sure. But
No.
ultimately, it
Yeah,
searches its
it's so
way.
kinetic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's what happens when you mount a camera onto a motorcycle or a dirt bike or whatever they used. It's it works really well. Ultimately, it finds its way around the cabin to the window to the bedroom and finds Linda, crashes through, and she screams. Ash kind of turns off the tape and stands up and calls out to her. He walks into the bedroom and drops this super flat and warm champagne on the ground when he sees the destruction. Um, Steps outside, calls for her, starts looking around the woods, and he's attacked by his possessed girlfriend. Stopping her only by lopping
Mhm.
off her head with a shovel. I love the way that she stumbles forward, advancing on him. And I think that's partially because of the contacts that they were using. You can't see shit when these things are in your eyes. I don't know if you've ever read
Yeah.
any of Bruce Campbell's autobiographies, but he talks at length about those contact lenses and If Chins Could Kill, how painful they were and how you had like zero vision. Good
Yeah,
times.
I was actually reading like a making of like slideshow earlier today, and he said that they were supposed to be the soft ones, right? Not glass, but it was more
Oh
like putting
shit.
Tupperware in your eyes,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I
um,
remember those comments in that autobiography. And yeah,
mm,
I'm so lucky that I did not grow up in an era of hard contacts. I started wearing
yeah,
contacts in sort of the mid to late 90s, and it was soft contacts
nice.
all the way. And
All
yeah,
day.
I can't even imagine that world. Um,
Yep.
so yeah,
Also,
oh, go ahead.
it's it's mysteriously easy to lop off her head with the shovel. Just saying.
Yeah, it's one of those shovels that's got like the really sharp edges to it. It's yeah, yeah, it's
Mhm.
he does a good job of it though. And then
Yeah.
buries his
Oh, he
girlfriend,
does.
keeping the pendant and placing a makeshift cross in the ground. We get a nice crash of thunder and lightning and a super fun Dutch angle, no less, while all this is happening. And then immediately cut to early the next morning where the force rushes the house, crashes through the doors, passing all the way through the house out to the front where it takes Ash and slams him through the forest into a tree, dropping him face first into a very large puddle of muddy water. Uh, you get those fun couple of beats where he's face down in this puddle and you get the bubbles blowing up
Yeah.
all around his head. I'm curious if Bruce did all the bubbling himself or if they actually put a hose under the water there. Knowing his relationship with Sam Raimi, he probably made Bruce do it himself. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. After a few beats of that, he pops out of the water possessed. Um, but the rising sun drives the possession out of him, and then he sort of passes out from exhaustion. We get this while this is happening too. We get this sweet reverse action shot of all this mist flowing. Well, that yeah, his close up of his eye, and it's the cloudiness is going away, and
Yeah.
you get all the mist in the landscape around him going back into the ground, which looks fantastic. It's
It's so cool. Yeah.
you gotta love when movies are shot on film, and and they will stand the test
Yeah.
of time
Oh God.
if it's decent quality. Um, and yeah, it looks great. Um, so yeah, Ash just kind of drops to the ground and sort of sleeps it off throughout the day, snapping awake quite a bit later. This cool shot where clearly they had a camera on a twisted wire that they pulled up from his body very quickly, so it spins around a little bit. Um, but yeah, he snaps awake and looks around, and it's one of those awesome shots where you've got the subject looking at the camera and then the camera does like a full 360 around to kind of show you what he's looking at. I think we get something kind of
Mhm.
similar in The Green Knight when
Mm.
Gawain is all tied up. It's a cool thing. But yeah, he looks around and
Absolutely.
then
Yeah.
focuses on the house where we see these eyes form in front of it and a droning
Yeah.
join us. Um,
Oh no.
and he's like, fuck this. And he just kind of looks around quickly and peels off in his Oldsmobile. And, he's a little tad distracted there as he's driving off. He's trying to wipe the shit off of his face and everything. And he nearly crashes into the destroyed bridge. And I love how all the girders and everything are all twisted up, almost like a claw. And
Yeah.
when he
It's
screams
so awesome.
no, the arch of his back almost matches the curve of the girders. His reaction is so strong. It's cool. But
Yeah. It's great.
yeah, and then all of a sudden, hey buddy, sun's getting real low because it is going down, and he realizes, oh, this isn't good because the force rises out of the gorge, but then of course just catches Ash just leaning up against his car. But he backs up as fast as he can, even managing a reverse 180 on a dirt road.
Yeah.
And peels off back to the cabin. And shout out to the branches smacking his face as he drives, which was absolutely Sam Raimi jamming branches into the vehicle at him when they were filming that. It's basically anytime you're seeing Bruce Campbell smacked around the head with anything from slightly off screen, it's usually Sam or occasionally Ted doing that to him. So the story
Yeah.
goes.
I get, yeah. That
Yeah.
makes sense. They're
Oh
like
yeah.
brothers. They're
Exactly.
like
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. At the end of the day, the Evil Dead films are basically just a bunch of friends making a fun little movie with a Super 8 camera in the woods behind their house. Um,
pretty much,
it's
yeah.
kind of the lineage of these films as it is. But yeah, ultimately Ash, super distracted by trying to get away from this thing, he crashes into a stump and goes through the windshield. As does the force behind him. It's one of those things where they had a big plank
Yeah.
mounted to a motorcycle with the camera at the
Mhm.
front of that so that they can mash it through the windows of the car as they moved forward, getting that look. And
Yeah,
the
it's such a
force,
rad shot.
oh yeah. Yeah, they got super creative with tons of stuff in this film. Um Yep, necessity is the mother of invention, like we were talking about last night. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah,
Um, the forest chases Ash into
100%.
this cabin until it loses him, and then it heads back outside. And there's something about the groaning, moaning, drone of the Evil Dead here. How it sounds like it's a little upset that it kind of lost him inside the cabin. Um, and we
Mhm.
see that Ash is hiding in the fruit cellar, kind of peeking up from under the trapdoor. Um, cut from cut from here to Annie getting picked up by Ed at the airport. Annie, of course, the daughter of the professor from the tape. Ed, the research
Mhm.
assistant, although I think they kind of have a little thing going on too. But
Yeah.
she's got these recently discovered missing pages from the Necronomicon, and their plan is to go to her father's cabin to show him. But being that there's no phone at the cabin, Ed can't get a hold of them, so there's no way to know that they have squatters. And when you find one squatter, you generally have others. It's you got to deal with
Yeah,
that early.
it's like an infestation for sure,
Yeah,
you know? And
absolutely.
they have rights. They can't, they can stay there. You gotta be careful with squatters.
Yep, you got to be careful with that stuff. That's for sure. Ed,
That's
he's
right.
super excited. Annie thinks they may have found a way into another world through the book. Okay, we see them loading her giant trunk into the uh, trunk of his car. I have no idea how that giant crate fit into the back of that car, but it did.
I
Um,
know.
and then
It's a
cut
good
back
it's a
to
solid joke, but like
yeah,
it's like, whoa, where did that come from?
yeah, I don't get how it actually fits into the opening of the truck, but whatever.
Me
Um,
either. Yeah.
yeah, we cut back to the cabin from here where Ash is trying to sort of hunker down and rest. He's in this rocking chair in the corner. He's boarded up the windows and the doors, which has been kind of necessary because the force blew out a ton of them. But yeah, he's had a rough go of it so far. He's also very sweaty,
Yeah.
and feeling that something is amiss. He goes to
Yeah.
investigate, and the piano starts playing the tune that he was playing earlier, making him think of Linda. He pulls out the pendant, and he starts weeping to the music. But then the boards on one of the windows back in the living room collapse, prompting him to go look
Mhm.
outside, where he sees his ex-girlfriend rise from the dead and do a fun little dance. Where it's done in stop motion, but it's cool as hell, and the head keeps popping off and spinning around independently of the body, and vice versa. And when she's done with the little dance, she kind of flits away with this little, and I love it
Yeah, she's
so.
like,
It's yeah. It's like
It's
something
like
out
one
of
of
a
those.
Zelda game. Yeah. It's
It's
but
so it's so great.
yeah. She flies off, but then pops up to fuck with him through the window. It's one of those great things where, you know, the arms are sticking through the window, and clearly they're just prop arms that Bruce is holding on to his throat as he rams his head
Yeah.
against it like he's getting pulled through. But it works.
Just a
Eh,
he's just like in this movie, he's just a master of hurting himself,
oh yeah,
which is incredible.
yeah. He'll do anything for the bit. Um, and Ash screams and pops awake back in the chair where he started, and he can't quite get out of the chair. He's so terrified by what's happened. He tries multiple times, can't even get a word out. But ultimately, this is when Linda's head drops into his lap. With a hello, lover, and she bites his hand. And this is where he runs through the entire cabin, smacking her head against stuff, trying to dislodge it. And she's just cackling away. It's great. And we get the
It's so good.
horrible, it's wonderful, but we get some awful ADR where he goes, work shed. And he runs outside to go deal with that. So the joke that I've heard
It's
is
so
that
awkward.
when Bruce was on the set of Escape from LA with Kurt Russell, Kurt Russell
yeah.
was a big fan of these movies, and he's like, "Hey Bruce, say work shed for me."
That's fucking
I would have
hilarious.
died. I would have fucking died. That's awesome. But yeah,
So incredible.
he takes her head out to the shed and clamps it down in the vise, where it starts kind of talking shit to him about how Linda's in hell and, you know, burning in, you know, agony and everything. And he's like, enough of this shit. And he reaches up for a chainsaw. He pulls aside this little curtain, and instead of the chainsaw, we see a chalk outline of where it should be, because, you know, why wouldn't you do chalk outlines of where your tools go in your work shed, right? And he's like, where's the
Yeah, it's like
chainsaw?
that's such a cartoon moment.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. So much of this is absolutely like, you know, Warner Brothers Looney Tunes type stuff, because that's when the door bursts open and the headless corpse of Linda comes charging in with the chainsaw revving and attacks him. And it's fucking hilarious, first of all, but also, ooh, it's very effective. He picks up a crowbar and kind of fends it off, and it reverses back, digging into the neck of the body. And meanwhile, Linda is sort of like directing the body, because it turns around and tries to get at him in reverse with the blade of the you know, the bar of the chainsaw there. And ultimately, he's able to overpower it. But he picks up the saw, and one of the arms comes with it, which is great. He has to peel that
Yeah.
off of the
He just plops it down.
uh-huh. And when he stands up with the chainsaw and fires it back up again, Linda shows herself as normal, or at least her head is normal, and she pleads with him not to kill her. And, you know, he kind of moans, you know, no. And but then the evil version of Linda screams back at him, yes. It's and he finally has enough, and yeah, cuts her up into little pieces. Um, Heads back into the house, covered with a ton of gore, and he notices a shotgun hanging in the kitchen, so he drops the chainsaw on the floor and he loads up. And this is where he starts noticing the rocking chair back in the living room start moving of its own accord, almost taunting him a little bit. And he approaches and kind of gingerly reaches out to it, but it stops moving before he can touch it. It's kind of at this moment that the enormity of what he's been through hits him, and he drops the gun, you know, kind of reaching up to his face, and he stumbles over to this ovular mirror on the wall, and he kind of leans into it, just like trying to get a grip, telling himself that he's fine. But this is where his mirror image reaches through the mirror and grabs him, and he's like, we just cut up our girlfriend with a chainsaw. Does that sound fine? And then ultimately starts choking him out. But then he sort of snaps to as he's choking himself. It's a fun transition. I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's really good. It's really effective.
Oh yeah. He goes back to inspect the mirror. Again, trying to reassure himself that he's all right. But this is where he looks down and the evil starts getting into his hand from Linda's bite. And his hand almost immediately starts getting a mind of its own and attacking him. And we get you bastards, you dirty bastards, give me back my hand. Back my hand. Oh, it's
so good.
Yeah, there's so much that you can tell they all grew from the first film, and even though this is cheesy as all get out, it's so much above and beyond what they had in the original. We fade from the exterior of the cabin, which also had this fun little like fart of mist that goes across the screen as they fade out. To Annie and Ed approaching the bridge and finding this good old boy putting up barricades. When he tells them that they're not going through, he flips on his headlights to illustrate the point. They see the destroyed bridge at that point. Annie, kind of inquires about if there's another road or anything, and we are introduced to Bobby Joe, who of course has a gross chewing tobacco moment where she spits all over her own shin. Good old boy, whose name is Jake, he offers to take them along a trail for a price and to, really hit home how stupid the guy is. He asks first for $45, and before he can even get it out, he gets an elbow in the ribs from Bobby Joe, and he changes that to $100. Annie, perfectly willing to, pay them for this, but if he's willing to carry her bags, and he looks into the back window of the car and just sees like this little satchel and the frame with the pages and all that, and you get this sure from him and this giant shit-eating grin on her face because fuck them. Back at the cabin, Ash is desperately trying to find a solution to his little problem. And he goes into the kitchen to pour some water on it. It's Raimi just loves to try to get creative with his shots, doesn't he? Because we get the basically glass plate at the bottom of the sink aimed up at the pouring water from the faucet just to get a fun angle. But Ash kind of gets distracted trying to cool the hand, and the hand decides this is the time to start smashing plates over Ash's head. Ultimately knocking him out with a bottle on the floor, but not before he's able to do a complete somersault in the air. It looked like Bruce did that himself somehow.
Yeah, it's really fucking impressive, that move right there. Because I was watching it today and it happened and I had to rewind it twice and I'm like, he's got to be doing this. Like he just did it in the air, just did a flip. It's insane.
Yep. Yeah, the things he'll do for the bit, right? It's but yeah, knocks himself. The hand knocks him out. And the scene of the hand dragging him across the floor towards the cleaver. I love that so much because you get the POV shot of the cleaver from the hand's perspective. And just before it makes it there, he stabs it through with like a butcher knife or a chef's knife or something like that. And get that. That's right.
The sounds that the hand makes for me is like really funny. It's like a little tiny person going like, come on, just a little bit more. Come on, I'm gonna get the knife. Like it's just weird little creepy voices like that. It's hilarious.
And with the hand pinned to the floor, he picks up the chainsaw and pulls the cord with his teeth. Love it. And starts to saw through his wrist with a "Who's laughing now?"
Who's laughing now?
as blood sprays up in his face. Yep.
Good.
That was probably Sam
So
there
good.
with the hose. But yeah, back to our foursome following the trail and Jake lugging Annie's heavy trunk on his back. Um, it's basically this scene is just to show that, yes, she got the better of him. And that's it, because we cut right back to the cabin where Ash somehow has not bled out, and he's placing the hand inside a coffee can, kind of like how you catch a spider on the ground with a glass. And he puts a few books on top for good measure to weigh it down, including A Farewell to Arms. Haha.
Yeah. Classic.
Yep. He bandages up his stump with what looks like a doily and some good old fashioned duct tape. But the hand escapes the coffee can. He grabs the shotgun and follows the hand around the room, shooting at the wall. The hand taunts him, even flipping him off from the little mouse hole in the baseboard. Love that bit. Also, the hand gets caught in a mousetrap for a little bit, and Ash laughs his ass off. He sort of follows the hand through the wall, blasting at it here and there. And when he finally thinks he's gotten the better of it, because we see a little tiny trickle of blood and hear the hand whimpering and it kind of trails off, we start to hear this bit of a rush. And then the trickle of
Yep.
blood increases quite a bit, and it flows like a fire hose at him from the holes in the wall, where he can't even keep his footing on the ground, ultimately turning black. You got that black goo trope that you love so much, and it reverses back into the wall. Sam Raimi loves his reverse acting and his reverse shots of things. It's one of his shticks, but it works well in all this.
Bad black blood.
Mm-hmm. And, Ash, very unsettled from what has just happened, goes to sit down in this chair, which completely collapses under him, and he kind of bonks his head on the wall a little bit. So the next scene, I don't know if it's from the head trauma or just the stress of everything, but the deer head on the wall suddenly comes to life and angles down and looks at him and starts laughing. And then the little gooseneck lamp on the table starts doing the same, and everything around the room starts coming to life and laughing with him. It is one of my favorite scenes
scene
of the movie. Yes.
Yeah.
And he joins in his little like cartoon character up and down where the gooseneck lamp is matching him as they're both cackling away. It's fucking fantastic.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
And it all ends ultimately with a knock at the door where he snaps to and fires both rounds into it, hearing a scream on the other side. He reloads, opens the door to find no one there. And he backs up with the door open, and all of a sudden is thrown to the ground as Jake tackles him out of nowhere. It's so funny because you would have seen this guy coming through the door. But it's just fun how it plays out. You get Ed rushing in, and between the two of them, the guys get the better of Ash and sort of knock him out a bit. And Bobby Joe steps in. She's got a small wound on her shoulder from the shotgun. And then Annie walks in, sees all the carnage, sees the chainsaw, the bloody chainsaw on the floor, and just automatically assumes that Ash has killed her parents.
It's rational. It's rational to me.
Oh, absolutely. It's the place is a train wreck. There's gore everywhere. This dude looks beat to hell, and he's covered with viscera. Yeah. Jake gets the idea to throw him into the cellar, and they drag him over there as he pleads with them, but ultimately they toss him down there, and he kind of crashes down the stairs, breaking a couple of them as he goes, and collapses on the dirt floor. And Bobby Joe even spits on him before they lock him down there, because she's just that kind of girl. And then, we get Jake tending to Bobby Joe's wound while Ed and Annie look around for signs of life, but they can't find anybody. But Annie's like, well, here's my dad's stuff. And she turns on the tape recorder, and we all hear about her mother being possessed and turning on her father. Turns out he had to kill her and bury her in the fruit cellar. And not a few seconds after we hear this on the tape, but she immediately pops up out of the ground, now played by Ted Raimi, who, of course, moves to attack Ash. And we've got the idiots upstairs struggling to unlock the cellar door and get Ash out as Henrietta, slowly advances on him with her head transforming into what I think they called the Pee-wee head, that has these weird, like, monkey sounds.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It's
so weird. Why
it's
is it?
fun, though.
What's with the monkey sounds? I was thinking about that today.
Yeah, it's and they come back again later too. But
They do. Big time later.
So as she's advancing on him, making these noises with the strange face and everything, we see a couple of hands reach down and grab Ash by the head and yank him out of there. It's ultimately, Henrietta pops out of the opening and starts attacking them all. She throws Ed headfirst into a picture frame on the wall, and he's down for the count. Ash flips the trap door down on her head and stomps on it to get her to go back down. Of course, this causes one of her eyeballs to launch straight across the room and, of course, into Bobby Joe's mouth, and she swallows.
So gross.
We get this almost cartoon sound effect of her gulping it down. Ash and Jank, they combine their weight on the trapdoor and manage to chain it up. And we get the wonderful comedy of Henrietta fighting from the underside and, making these little grunting, sounds as she does so. And you get that after they think they finally have it settled down, that final little grunt as it pops the trap's door up just one last little time. That's gold. It's gold right there. I like that a lot. We move from here to Ash delivering some exposition, trying to get them all to understand what they're going through. Bobby Joe, screams. It's a great jump scare where she just pops into frame and screams, wanting to leave. But Ash doesn't think they can get out until they have daylight to protect them all.
Which makes sense.
He's been through it. He understands. Yeah. It's from here where we get Henrietta popping up the trapdoor as much as she can with the chain on it, and she looks all normal again, and she's singing a nursery rhyme to Annie to get her to let her out. And, she goes through this little backstory of Annie's birth, how it was in September of 1962, and it was snowing, and it was so strange that it was snowing in September. And, Annie's like, that thing in the cellar isn't my mother. And that's where Ed pops up and he is possessed, floating in the air. And ultimately, does his little spiel and then floats through the air over to Bobby Joe, where he takes a big bite out of her hair. I love how he kind of
so weird
floats sideways across the room with this little, with his hands and everything. It's, yeah.
He's like in the air.
Yeah.
And then he just starts eating her hair. He really just does eat her hair, rips it out of her head and just straight up eats it. Doesn't spit it out or anything.
Yeah. We actually see him suck this down. It's let's see here. He then turns to Ed, turns to go let the we'll call her the witch out of the basement, and he knocks out Jake when he tries to stop him by throwing him up into a light fixture in the ceiling. And Ash runs out of the room in this moment, and Annie thinks he's running away, because he's a coward. But he comes back just a couple of seconds later with an axe to basically hack Ed into pieces. And everyone's just kind of shocked by the situation. They're just kind of standing there covered in green goo from Ed. And
yeah, it's definitely green and gross looking. It looks like Slimer slime.
Yeah, like from back in the day with Ghostbusters toys, if you were to buy some of the slime, it was like that color green. Um, yeah. So Jake is busy staring out the window while Ash and Annie are like investigating the pages and everything, but he can't see the trail anymore, and it's like the woods just swallowed it up. Um, and this I think is where we get the complete dead silence around them, and
Oh
all
yeah.
of a sudden,
Yep.
we get this series of noises that play around the cabin. And we get this awesome choreography of everybody following the noises around the room, but all in sync with
Mhm.
each other. That was really well
Yeah.
done. I love how they got all that synced up together. That probably took a few tries to make
Yeah,
all that happen just
that
right.
had to take some practice to pull off properly, for sure. Because they're like
Yep,
all at
this
the
bit
same
of
time.
us
Great.
acting this out is really great for audio listeners. I know, but I mean, if you've seen the film before, you know what we're doing right now.
You
Um,
know our heads are darting around like birds.
yeah, exactly. And there are all these funky sounds, and some of it's like almost like a creature sniffing something out, but some of them just almost sound like what you would imagine the sound of the camera making its way across the wood would create or something like that. It's just really interesting. Jake gives a what the hell was that? Ash responds with maybe something trying to force its way into our world. Oh, really, Ash? Is that what you think? Um, and then we get some shrieking and booming from the bedroom. And it's certainly not from Ash and Linda from before, that's for sure. But no, we get just this thudding, booming, and ultimately we get this strobe of lightning from in there as well. And this shot of the door creaking open and that lightning arcing while the booming continues is fucking stellar. I love
Oh
this so
yeah.
much. It looks so good. Um, which, you
Yeah,
know,
I like what they did with like aspect ratios with the zooms and stuff and during like the scene right before this and even like leading into that bedroom. And the sound design is so good. But it's just so crazy. It's like they stretched the aspect ratio out so it just looks so haunting. And it's like the camera itself is stretching and it
mhm.
feels very unsettling.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um, and they all go to investigate. Well, some more willingly than others because Jake, you know, he's a fucking coward. But yeah, Ash and Annie go inside. One of them has a lantern, and we get the jump scare of Jake just leaping into the room and saying, "Hey, see, I told you there was nothing there." But then, of course, Annie's father's spirit just blasts his way into the room from the other side. Um, he is in much pain and warns her of what's to come. It's a fun effect. Yeah, it's just kind of floating in the air there and, kind of warping around a bit. Um, but yeah, he tells her that they can stop all this with the missing pages from the book, and they can use it to send the evil back. And he's like, say, do it, save my soul and your own lives as he
Yeah.
fades away. Um,
Just like slowly walking away from the microphone.
Yep, yep. And yeah, we get one of those fun little moments where Bobby Joe is like, Jake, stop holding my hand so hard. And he's like, I ain't holding your hand. And the camera moves down. Of course, it's the evil hand doing it. And the lantern, yeah, the lantern gets knocked out of somebody's hands and it goes out. And when they get it lit again, Bobby Joe is nowhere to be seen because she's had fucking enough at this point. She is running from this cabin. She runs screaming through the woods, and we know that's not a good thing to do in these movies. Because she is ultimately set upon by the trees in a much more tasteful way than in the
Mm,
original film.
big
Um,
time.
Yep, there is no dendrophilia in this film, thank God. As she meets her demise, she screams, and it's matched with the crashing of the frame holding the open pages, or the extra pages of the book here. Because instead of just opening the thing up, they throw it onto this desk to break it open. Like you do.
Yeah.
But but
Just
yeah,
slam it down.
Ash and Annie, they pick the pages out of the broken glass, and we've got Jake whining about Bobby Joe in the background. And Ash is a little callous at this point. I think he's had enough of Jake's bullshit, but he's kind of a dick about it. Where he's like, hey, if she went out into those woods, she's donezo. There's nothing we can do about it. And this is where he turns back to Annie, and he gets this big ass chill. And it's when Annie turns to a page with a hefty amount of foreshadowing, because it's an image of this, hero that apparently fell from the sky and saved them all from the evil dead.
Hmm.
And this is where she sees their plan forming. They can read the first passage and the spirit will be made flesh. And then when they read the second, they'll open a portal to send it back. But of course, this is when they're interrupted by Jake with the shotgun. And he's got a new plan. They're all going to go into the woods and look for Bobby Joe. Jake doesn't like their plan, and so he grabs the pages from them and he throws them into the cellar with these pages don't mean squat.
Boo.
Yeah, boo indeed. I love his delivery of it, though. These pages don't mean squat. And he forces them outside at gunpoint, and he screams for Bobby Joe. But
Bobby
all
Joe!
all the trees
Bobby
around them
Joe!
are moving, and they're watching them.
Oh yeah.
Like a bunch of ants. And he continues calling for her and basically knocks Ash down with the gun. And this is where the evil starts approaching, as it cuts in between the shots, POV shots of the force coming at them, and him calling out for Bobby Joe. And then we get evil Ash popping up and attacking, throwing Jake headfirst into a tree. Jake gets thrown headfirst into a lot of things between that light fixture, and I think there was a wall at one point or another in the cabin, and then of course into this tree. And Annie runs back to the cabin, and Ash gives her the iconic "join us," pointing at her. And she runs inside, throws the door closed, and he kind of throws his whole body against it, screaming for Annie. And when he leaves, she grabs that spinal column dagger and makes her way to the other side of the house, thinking that he's probably circling around. And she sees the doorknob on the back door rattling and prepares herself, stabbing as the door opens. But unfortunately, she just got Jake in the chest. He drops to the
Yeah.
ground. And this is where Evil Ash makes his way to the back of the house there, and he's trying to kind of like get by the porch swing or whatever, and he's having a hard time of it. And she's trying to close the door, but she's just mashing it up against Jake and his wound, and he's screaming. She finally gets him dragged inside so she can close the door, and Ash is pounding away at the door, and she's doing her screaming. I love how this scene is reflected in Army of Darkness, but it's Ash who's doing the girly screaming that time around.
Yeah.
It's
That's a classic.
it's good that they reuse this.
Oh yeah,
But
for sure.
she screams and screams and screams until he stops. And this is where Annie pulls the dagger out of Jake, and it was in there deep too.
Dude, for real.
Yeah, and generally you don't pull something like that out. That's only going to make things worse, but she's just doing
Yeah,
what he
she's
asked.
clearly not trained in first aid.
Nope, not at all. no. She's an anthropologist, for crying out loud. So she drags him throughout the length of this cabin, stopping in the kitchen to tell him to shut up. She's like, shut
Yeah,
up,
I
shut
love
up,
that
shut
shit
up.
where she's like, like just screaming, shut
Yes.
up. Yeah. I was like, yeah, someone tell this guy to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, finally, yes. She manages to get him to the living room, ultimately dropping him near the cellar door because, genius. She picks up the axe, but that's right when Henrietta pops up and drags Jake halfway into the hatch, and we get this geyser of blood pouring out as she tears into him, and his legs are kicking a little bit.
Iconic.
Until ultimately he is no more, and we get Annie standing up, and she's almost like pristine clean after being hosed down with this thing. There's definitely some continuity issues in this film, but that's okay. It's
yeah, she had way more blood on her than like right after the camera.
She would have been soaked. Yep. But a very clean Annie is startled by evil Ash, who throws her against the wall, knocking her out. But he finds the pendant near her body, and of course his love for Linda and his grief somehow stop him, and he changes back. And he sobs and doesn't notice Annie getting back up with the axe, and she attacks him over and over as he keeps trying to plead to her that he's fine, or rather that he's all right, and eventually stopping her. I'm all right now. And, they decide they need a new plan because they need to make something happen a little bit faster now. They decide they need to get the pages back. And to do that, they need to go into that cellar and carve them a witch. Cut to Henrietta cackling away in the darkness. Yeah. Yeah. So this is... Dead by dawn. This is where we get the amazing montage of them arming up out in the work shed. One
of the fucking greatest movies or moments in movie history right here.
Hell
is the quick zoom cuts, like shroom, boom, put that down. Oh, now this is down. We're soldering this. They tighten the thing on his arm. It's just so fucking metal.
You can tell Edgar Wright got so much inspiration for his work out of this one scene. It's
1000%.
Yeah, it's not to discount Edgar Wright's work. He's amazing in his own right, but there is so much.
Yeah, we all have our influences.
Oh, hell yeah. So yes, we get the creation of the chainsaw hand and basically modifying the shotgun into a sawed-off shotgun. And he uses the chainsaw to do that because, of course, that'd work. Using his elbow to break off the end, and then he does this little spin around of the gun into a sling on his back, and we get the groovy. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Yeah. And this is where we start.
Cool.
I mean, it's iconic, right?
Yeah.
We get the trees at this part starting to pull themselves out of the ground, and cut to inside where Ash is using the chainsaw to saw through the cellar door, and cuts it in half and kicks it in, and he descends, immediately finding a page on the stairs and hearing groans coming from the back of the cellar. So he inches his way forward, past all these hanging gourds. I love the gourds just dangling from the ceiling of the basement.
Why are there so many gourds? Is that did that show up with the Kandarian demon, or were they just like brewing something down there?
It was Henrietta's kink. Who knows? But
I don't know where Henrietta put those, man.
Yeah. It's best we don't know. But yeah, he makes his way past those in the fruit cellar to this door in the back, and he passes through. And it's in a section of the basement where there's all these leaking pipes. And boy, if that wasn't from damage from the events of this weekend, then they had bigger problems in this cabin than demonic possession. But he makes his way through. Yeah, yeah, it was.
Expensive fix, I think.
Yeah, I think they have some mold problems for sure. But
Oh, big time.
ultimately, he's making his way to the back of this section of the basement where you see this curtained off area and all these eerie noises coming from behind it. He brushes aside the curtain, and it's just like the hot water heater or boiler or whatever it was. And ultimately, this is where Jake's bloody skeleton falls on him. Um, and he finds the final pages back there and hears more groans, but it's time to come back. And at the stairs, Ash manages to throw the wad of pages up to Annie in one neat little toss without them flying everywhere or anything. It is just
I
perfect.
I noticed the continuity thing too. When he does find the pages, they're actually in water and they're wet. They're so fucking soaked.
Yeah.
And then there's a camera cut and he just sort of like brushes it off and they're dry and he's holding them and then he just perfectly throws them up. So I
Yep.
don't know. It's just so crazy how intact they are, but they are made out of human skin. So
Yeah,
that's
maybe it was
probably
a
why.
maybe it was like a reverse reverse shot thing where ultimately she was dropping the pages down to him. Um
Hey, I wouldn't put it past the Raimis.
yeah, it's kind of Sam's shtick, right? So
Yeah, I love it though.
he throws those up to her and she goes off to get started and Ash starts making his way up the stairs, but that's when Henrietta reaches through the riser portion and grabs him by his ankles and brings him back down to the basement, sort of
Mhm.
stopping Annie from moving forward with her recitation because, she hears what's going on down there. Um, and as she approaches the opening of the cellar, this is when the witch pops out and attacks her, kind of floating through the air and pulling at her hair. I can't remember
Oh
if
yeah.
it's here or a little bit later on, where you got Ted in the Henrietta suit, who famously was like wearing this big rubber suit, and it was just filled with his sweat because it was so fucking hot. They're filming in North Carolina, I think, and there's this bit where he turns his head to the side and you see all this disgusting sweat pouring out of the ear hole. It's
Yeah.
it's really bad. um
Disgusting.
yep, yep.
He
And
survived though. So it's
yes,
good.
yep, yes he did, yes he did. While all this is going on, we get Ash in full on goddamned hero mode emerging from the cellar
Yeah.
behind them, and he whistles for attention, and when they turn their heads he's like, let's go. And Henrietta charges and they throw down. Ultimately he's not able to really land any punches or blows with the chainsaw or anything, but she grabs him by the face and tosses him against the wall. And then we get some kind of 80s style wrestling moves in here between the two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the
Yeah.
bit where she rises up from the ground with that.
Yeah.
And
Gonna come
that's
down
where, yep,
with
that's where we
with
get
the
the
slam
peewee
attack.
head. Yep, we get the peewee head again and the super long, elongated neck. And I'll swallow your soul. I'll swallow your soul. Um,
ISO.
yeah, yeah. And this
So
is
cool.
where Annie distracts with the nursery rhyme. And then Ash manages to strike with the chainsaw, digging into her back there, and he lops off her arms, and finally and the head drops to the ground and kind of angles up and, yells out again, hey, I'll swallow your soul, I'll swallow your soul. And this is where Ash steps on it, aims the shotgun at it, and says, swallow this. Blows it
Oh,
away,
it's so fucking cool.
blows the smoke from the end of the shotgun, does his little spin move back to his holster. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where Cloud got it. He got it from Ash.
Yeah, there you
You
go.
know,
Yep.
FF7.
Yep. Absolutely. With that big fucking Buster sword. Um,
Hell yeah.
and Ash and Annie embrace after they've gone through this very traumatic incident. Of course it was her mom. So yeah, that's regardless if she was demonically possessed or not, it's still
I'm messed up.
something.
Yeah, it's a little
And
rough.
this is where the trees start to attack, just slamming on this house. And like everything's falling apart. All the books are falling out of the bookshelves,
It's like
dishes
a
out of the
Whomping
cabinets.
Willow.
Yep. Yep. Things are not going well. This is where she tells him that she had only gotten through the first passage, making the evil manifest. And basically at this point, she's got to get in the second one to make it go away. And Ash is just pleading with her to, make it happen. And this is where we get Rotten Applehead popping through the doorway, which is what they call the face. Yeah, there it is. And at the sight of it, Ash's hair goes white.
Yeah.
Yeah. She goes for the second passage, but the evil hand stabs her in the back with the dagger.
Oh, look at it.
Yeah.
Keep reading.
Yeah. And she's dying clearly. She's got this dagger in her back, but she, kind of finishes up the passage before she drops to the ground. And this is where we see the portals start to open outside, and it starts to just suck things towards it like the car. And Rotten Applehead grabs Ash, and we get that Larry Moe and Curly that, was in that picture behind you there. They're supposed to be heads of the people that were taken by the evil dead, but they very clearly look like Larry Moe and Curly because, of course, Sam Raimi is, the biggest fan of the Three Stooges. Ash, he jams the chainsaw into the eye of this creature, and we get just all this purple fluid coming out at him because, of course, why not? We've had every other color so far.
Gross fluids in your face.
Yep. And it's this is where things kind of let him go, and everything starts getting sucked outside and doors closed and everything. And Ash goes over to Annie to, kind of comfort her. I think she's definitely dead at this point. He tells her, "Hey, you did it, kid." But that's when the door rips open and everything starts getting sucked outside. Ash grabs onto the the plank that's on top of the pass through to the kitchen, and ultimately that gets ripped off, and that gets pinned against the front door, and he's holding onto it as his feet are lifted up behind him, and for God's sake, how do you stop it? And he gets sucked into this portal, and Raimi does his best 2001 A Space Odyssey moment with all the flashing lights and everything. And this is where Ash falls into Arthurian times. You get the car and a tree, and Ash himself crashing onto the ground there. And he's about to be killed by this sage and the knights that are with him, but this winged deadite makes an attack, and all the knights flee in terror. And Ash just stands up and takes its head off with his boomstick. And then he realizes that he's making the pose from the page. And as they all praise him, hail he who has come from the sky to deliver us from the terror of the Deadites. He realizes in horror that he's trapped back in time and that he's the hero from the prophecy. And credits as a couple of gauntlets smash into the camera.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Yeah, man.
I almost felt like I was like we were playing a D&D campaign and it was like Evil Dead 2. That's what that felt like to me. That's pretty rad. I felt like I was inside the movie. That was crazy.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. Evil Dead has not had a good track record of video games, unfortunately, of games in general. The fairly recent one, the asymmetric multiplayer one, was kind of fun, but
I own that one, and it's decent. It's just I didn't have anyone to play with, and I don't know.
I didn't get sucked into it, unfortunately. I tried a little bit, and
same.
I played a little bit with Demetrius Newell and Al Tribesman, I think, and
nice.
Unfortunately, just didn't take off. It's I feel like you could very easily make Evil Dead in one way or another into some kind of an RPG. That's funny because I
Maybe.
have a friend who's trying to get a group of people into doing some kind of like a tabletop RPG type thing through Discord or something like that. And I should
Yeah.
bring up Evil Dead as some type
That
of a concept. That could be a
that
lot
could
of
work.
fun.
I could see that working with like a Powered by the Apocalypse style system. Or you could, I mean you could adapt like D&D and stuff, but I could see it being more like cinematic, which is how that system works. You just kind of roll to see if like does good thing happen or does bad thing happen? And there's just a level of risk on if,
Hmm.
it has a chance of being bad. So
Yeah,
that could totally I could see like a cabin like little like one shot, and see who
uh-huh.
survives, if anyone.
Yeah, yeah, and ultimately everybody
That'd be
has to
cool.
have their be on their best smart ass behavior. Um,
Yeah.
that would absolutely make that work. Um,
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's I can't remember what the thing says at the very end of the credits. It's like Evil Dead 2, the ultimate experience, the sequel to the ultimate experience in grueling terror has been produced by or something like that. It's supposed to be a play off of the
Amazing.
credits from the original because they always refer to it as the ultimate experience in grueling terror. Um, but yeah.
Amazing.
And then
Um,
you get a call back to the production logo of Rosebud, but it's got the fly noise behind it and everything. Um, it's fun. Um,
yeah, it's so
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Everything about it.
Jacob, any final thoughts on Evil Dead 2? There's
I
got to
will
be something
say
we haven't talked about.
well, you were talking about video games a second ago. I popped into a friend's stream and I believe the PS2 had an Evil Dead game. I don't really know exactly what it's called, but it seemed decent. It was basically like, what if Ash doesn't get sucked into the portal and then just more Evil Dead shit just happens on Earth after the events of Evil Dead 2? And the opening like menu screen is just the cabin framed, like a wide shot of the cabin, and then his as the undead version doing like that dance and just waiting for you to press a button.
That's
But it
funny.
seemed decent. I mean, I would try it out. Classic games. Gotta try some old games out
Yeah, maybe
everyone.
it's on GOG or
Um,
something like that.
yeah, I don't know if it's on GOG. It might be locked on PS2, which is why a lot of people don't know about
Yeah.
it.
I
So you could allegedly
I
play it on computer.
I wonder because I had some kind of an Evil Dead PC game that, for whatever reason, was broken as hell. So I really couldn't get into it. It may
Yeah,
have been like the PC port of that game. Who knows?
it could have
Um,
been. Yeah, I was asking the guy that was playing it, and he was telling me, "Oh, it's just on PS2." But you never know. It could have also been. There's another Evil Dead game a long time ago. I just can't remember it. But yeah, they don't really have that great of a track record of games. I just thought I would at least bring that game up because I was like, this is kind of interesting. It's almost like
mhm.
Evil Dead 2.5 fan
Right,
fiction.
right,
So
right.
yeah,
It's
mhm.
yeah, God, movie's fun as hell. I
Yeah.
definitely went as Ash for a couple of Halloweens during undergrad.
Ah,
Uh, you
rad.
know, just got an old denim shirt and some khakis and just tossed tons of fake blood on them. Got a little chainsaw with a sound chip in it from like a Halloween shop, and then made a duct tape gauntlet to be able to put my hand into it, and
Nice.
just from the costume shop, a little shotgun and put it in a sling on my back, and there you go.
There you go.
I feel like there was one year even where the theater in Ann Arbor was playing Army of Darkness on Halloween, or at least
Nice.
one of those weekends around Halloween. So, everybody was out and about hitting house parties in costume and everything. So definitely went in an Ash costume to that with my buddy to go see Army of Darkness. That was fun.
That's so rad. That's like
But God,
Evil
I
Dead
wish I had
cosplay,
pictures. Yeah,
which
exactly.
is
Before
excellent.
people even called it cosplay, right?
Yeah.
But because I'm
These
old as
days, I guess.
fuck. But yeah, it's yeah. I Sad that I don't have good photos of that stuff. But ultimately, yeah, Evil Dead 2 is the one that always resonated with me as much as Army of
Yeah.
Darkness did. And
Mhm.
then, the TV show was a ton of fun because it was more just a continuation of these things.
Yeah, it
And
was so good. I didn't know what to expect, but I was like, I'm gonna watch every episode, which I didn't because I lost access to what was it on Stars
yeah,
before the I think the third season came out, whatever the last or second to last season was. But I
yeah,
definitely watched those first two seasons. It was so good. And they draw like, everybody talks about Army of Darkness. That's their favorite Evil Dead. And it's great, don't get me wrong. And I
oh, yeah.
also still like the first one. But like the
Mm,
second one to me is definitively like what Evil Dead's all about. And I think that the show took inspiration from every Evil Dead movie in different ways, which is what's really cool about it. And so yeah, they reference there's some things that happen in that show that I did not expect to happen that tie directly into that second movie. And I was like, oh, this is definitely a love letter. But yeah, no,
nice.
Evil Dead 2 is it's always going to be one of my favorite movies. It's just really fun. It's like I said, kinetic. It does will not bore you. It is funny in ways that you're not expecting, which is what I love the most about it. Like the scene with the blood out of the wall is just like one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And that being followed up by every item in the room laughing at him because he fell on his ass is just like, wow, you don't expect to see that in a horror film, but it's just
Nope.
so zany and like such a good way, and that's what I love about that movie. But it's also the gore, like the like how iconic it is with certain lines, and I mean of course also with Army of Darkness, but I mean that
Right.
groovy that zoom cut. And then just all the puppetry that happens here, like the way they produced and filmed this movie. Even it felt like they were still working within constraints, which is what made the first movie so good. They just didn't have money; they had to get creative. They kind of did something like that here too with a lot of their decisions, and I think that that's excellent. But they had more money, so they could do even more, and it really shows. And then, like, who doesn't love claymation animation? I mean, that's a throwback. That's old school, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean.
Big time Ray Harryhausen stop motion effects. Yeah,
Oh, it's
yeah.
so incredible.
It
I'll
was good.
always love stop motion.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get a little bit of everything that I love. Like I love Muppets and I love stop motion, and this movie has a lot of those in there on top of just being just a great horror film. And Bruce Campbell, man,
What's not to love
what an
there?
incredible human being.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely, such a
Yeah.
charmer.
That's for sure. Jacob, where can people find you?
Oh, I'm all over the internet. You said OMGzus. You can find me on the internet under that. It's OMGzus. There's really no other OMGzus. I think some guy took like the Instagram handle, but screw that guy. There's only one. If you Google that, you'll find me. But then we also have all our podcasts, Neon Pocket Dimension, which you were on. You can check that out. We got a YouTube. And we also have Neon Gaming Dimension, where we talk about video games. And then, of course, Odd Valley Studios, our other YouTube channel and Twitch account, which tomorrow we're going to do a podcast. And that's a drinking podcast. We start every episode completely sober, and then we pick a topic. We put words on a wheel that we spin, and then if we get those words, we have to hit a bell, and everybody has to drink, including the people listening or watching. So it's a good time. We're gonna talk about true crime while getting drunk tomorrow.
All
But
right.
other than that, hey, you know what I'm saying? I'm out there.
Yep.
You can find me out
Yep.
there.
Definitely find you in a kind of funny
Screaming.
chat here and there as well.
That's
That's
true.
for
Yeah, kind
sure.
of funny games daily. I'm in the chat all the time.
Yeah.
Well, just from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. Pacific. I'm in that chat hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, well, you're one of the good ones in the chat too, because every once in a while there's some assholes in there. But, hey,
Yeah,
that's, big live chats in
appreciate that.
general, right? It's,
Yeah,
well, you know it's true because you've experienced that.
right. We could get into some arguments. I just try to keep the peace in there, but
yeah,
like
you know it.
secretly I'll talk some shit. Oh, that's
Well, that
great.
always sounds like a plan.
Awesome.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on this one, and I'm sure we'll do something again in the future. That's the Neon Pocket Dimension episode was a ton of fun, and this was a blast too.
Yeah.
So glad that we were able
Oh yeah,
to
I had a
finally
great
make
time.
this happen. All right,
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's fun to
absolutely,
go
dude.
through like a whole movie scene by scene to just kind of relive it. And you did so well because I had just watched the movie like just a few hours ago. So I was like, yeah, this
Well,
is
thank you for that.
we're in there. We're in there. I was imagining it perfectly. But yeah, I had a blast, man. Thank you so
All right,
much
well, I
for
appreciate
the
that.
invitation. Yeah,
Oh, you're
absolutely.
welcome. This has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. I'll be back soon enough with another episode. But until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.
I'll swallow your soul.